Did God really tell you to start a YouTube channel? Did God really say do that? This is the reason why that assurance that we keep seeking up front is so dangerous. We get stuck with did God really say? Sometimes you're not going to know for sure if God really did say. I said I had an idea. I did not say it was a good idea. Hey y'all, hey, it's your girl Quay. Welcome back to the Heaven and Mind channel, where we just want to keep him in your mind and in your conversation. If you clicked on this video, chances are you may be like me, where you have a lot of ideas running around in your mind and you're not really sure whether or not these are just ideas that you have or whether or not it's something that God may actually want you to pursue. And so you may be questioning, God, is this really from you? Is this really from you? Is this really from you? And so in this video, I'm going to get to the root of what is at the bottom of that assurance that we feel like we've got to have before moving forward, that this is something that God may actually want us to pursue. And I'll also be giving you 3 questions to ask yourself before moving forward. So the first thing I want to address is this idea really from God, right? How do I know whether or not God is telling me to start the business, to go into this industry, to change jobs, to pursue this passion project, to do this ministry? How do I know whether or not God is saying do this versus do that? Well, at the foundation of this question really is this assurance that we believe oftentimes that if God is telling us to do it, that it will come with some level of guaranteed success. Because if God said it, God cannot fail. Therefore, I cannot fail. And if I cannot fail, then this project or this ministry or this business that I'm getting ready to pursue will also be successful. Now, on the flip side of that, however, is also this idea that if I do something that maybe God isn't leading me to do, then I not only won't be successful, but that my failure is evidence that I've been disobedient, right? So it's the double side of a single coin. If God told me to do it, I'm going to be successful. If I pursue it and God didn't tell me to do it, then I'm going to fail. And that failure means that I've been disobedient. So here's the thing that you need to know, though. Failure does not automatically equate to disobedience, okay? It's hard to process the fact that God will call you to do things sometimes that to you and to those around you, it may look like it was a failure, and God may actually be rejoicing in heaven because you took the steps, you stepped out on faith, you did the thing, and then the thing came to an end, and you're like, but I thought this was going to last for the next 5 years or 10 years. And God is saying, no, I just needed to know that you would step out on faith and be obedient. This ain't even the real project. I just needed you to learn some things that you need for where I'm getting ready to take you. So you just need to be assured that failure does not automatically equate to disobedience. So now here's the second thing. For the believer, when it comes to, is God telling me to do this thing or not? For us, it really does not matter. And I know that just threw some people. It really does not matter, because if it comes to pass, it comes with a purpose. Now, this does not mean that you should just go out there and start doing stuff. That's not what I'm saying either, because I'm going to give you 3 questions to consider and to ask yourself before pursuing any kind of project or idea or new business venture or new ministry. I'm going to give you those 3 questions. However, if the goal is for us as believers to please God in whatever we do, then we don't always have to have that assurance that our good idea is a God idea. Because if God allows the thing to live and to breathe and to have life and to materialize, then it is an opportunity for us to give him glory. 1 Peter 4:11 says, if anyone speaks, he should speak as one conveying the words of God. If anyone serves, he should serve with the strength God provides, so that in all things God may be glorified through Jesus Christ, to whom be the glory and the power forever and ever. Amen. Whatever you do, you should do it to the glory and honor of God. Colossians 3:17, and whatever you do in word or deed, Do it all in the name of the Lord Jesus, giving thanks to God the Father through him. So again, too many times we get stuck in wanting that assurance, right? We want the assurance that God has signed off on it because we equate that to success. And we also don't want to move forward thinking that we're being disobedient, because disobedience often gets equated to failure. So too many times we never take the first step because we want the assurance of success, and we also want the assurance that we're not going to fail. But the Bible says in multiple scriptures that whatever you choose to do, whatever your hands find to do, whatever you put your mind to doing, do it to the glory and honor of God. So if your goal is to please God in everything that you do, then you don't have to keep spinning your wheels before you ever take that first step. If your intention is that whatever I'm getting ready to pursue, I'm going to do it with God in mind and for the purpose of the kingdom and bringing him glory. So then when you get stuck in just saying, okay, well, but did God really say, but did God really say, but did God really say do that? And so raising that question a lot of times keeps us stuck. Did God really tell you to start that business? Did God really tell you to start a YouTube channel? Did God really say start that ministry? Did God really say go out and do that? We get stuck with did God really say? And we never make progress for the kingdom. Because the truth of the matter is, sometimes you're not going to know for sure if God really did say. Proverbs 16:9 says, in their hearts, humans plan their course, but God establishes their steps. So I can tell you from personal experience that God has a way of stopping things that he does not desire for you to do. Back in 2019, I had this idea that I wanted to start an in-home Bible study. Okay. So I had already thought about it and planned it out. It was going to be amazing. Okay. Literally, that was the name of the Bible study. It was going to be amazing. AWW-amazing. Now listen, I said I had an idea. I did not say it was a good idea, but I was going to start this in-home Bible study. So I had been thinking about it, planning it, been writing it down, had been working on some stuff and all of that. You know, when I was going to start the Bible study, I had plans to start this Bible study where I was going to invite people in my home to talk about some of the things I talk about on this channel at the end of March in 2020. Do you know what happened in March of 2020? COVID. God has a way of stopping things that he does not want you to do. And so naturally, it didn't happen. Could nobody come over to my house? But at the same time, there was this other idea that I also had in 2019 that I wanted to start a podcast with a good friend of mine. It was going to be called From the Minds of Brene and Quay. I had it all worked out. I was like, yo, some of these conversations that me and you have on the phone or via text message, people I think would be fascinated by. So I was like, let's do a podcast. She was like, and we're not. And so we didn't. And so what I saw was God kind of merging these ideas together. So COVID happened and I did not have the in-home Bible study. My friend turned me down, so I did not have the podcast. And yet after I got laid off, it was like, I don't have anything but time and opportunity. And so I took the podcast idea and I started a solo podcast doing what? Talking about things that I would be talking about if I had started the in-home Bible study. God has a way of changing stuff, stopping stuff, moving stuff, maneuvering stuff. But the question is, are you even starting anything? Because again, if you go back to Proverbs 16:9, it says that God establishes our steps. Well, you have not even taken a step. So what is God going to establish? We planned it in our hearts. We planned the course, but it says that God establishes our steps. This is the reason why that assurance that we keep seeking up front is so dangerous. We want the assurance that we're going to succeed and that we're not going to fail. And God is saying, I can't even do nothing if you don't start nothing. So you got to get started. Write the business plan. Put the blueprint of the ministry on paper. Write out what you think the Bible study or the YouTube channel is going to be. Write you a summary. Start doing some research. Start taking the first steps. And if God is saying, that's not the direction that I want you to go in, we can trust that he can reroute us if we allow him to do that. So don't be afraid of God's redirection. Okay. Don't be afraid of that. Don't be afraid that, oh man, this didn't work out. I knew it. I knew God wasn't telling me. I knew God wasn't leading me. God may just be saying, I appreciate your obedience and I appreciate you taking the risk to even take the first steps because you've given me something to work with. So let's shift here and let's see if we can't do this a different way. And here's the thing. This is a free side note for you. God's purpose for your life will match your personality. I think we have this fear that God is going to call us to do things that really don't align with who he created us to be, right? Most of us have had that fear at one time or another when we got serious about our faith that God was going to call us out to the mission fields and we was going to have to go do missions overseas and all of that. My grandmother tells this story where she had this fear and God told her, the harvest is ripe right where you at. She didn't have to go be no out of state, out of the country missionary. He said the mission field in your area, in your community is right for the picking. And my grandmother was the youth director at my church for 30 some odd years and the Christian education director for the last like 25, 26 years. He kept her right where she was at. I'm not a traveler. I'm a homebody. And so even though I was willing to be like, hey, I'm going to invite these people into my house. I told y'all in the 37 and Obsessed with Heaven video, I'm an 8 on the introvert scale. I don't have people over my house on a regular anyway. It was a sacrifice that I was willing to make for what I believed that God was going to call me to do. And yet when I look at what I'm doing, talking to technology and ain't nobody else here, this is more in line with my personality. Now, God may call me out of my comfort zone in other ways, and he has, and he will. But a lot of us have that fear that God's going to call us to do something that just does not align with who we really are. And yet God made you a certain way for a certain purpose and it will align. So that's for free. I just wanted you to know that. And I just wanted to testify a little bit that the way God has set this up for me right now is more in line with what I was willing to even give up and sacrifice to do what I thought God was leading me to do. Take that, do what you will with it. I just thought that I'd share. So here are some questions that I want to encourage you to ask and to pursue before getting started. So you may be like, all right, I have this idea. I have been stalling. I have been stuck because I've been waiting on this assurance from God and kind of wanting to make sure that it's not going to fail. And this is something that God is really leading me to do. And so I want you to ask yourself these 3 questions before you get started. So number 1, can I still be faithful to what God has already entrusted to me if I take on this new project? Okay. God values faithfulness. So whatever God has already given you to steward over, you have to ask yourself, if I pursue this project, if I take on this new responsibility, if I pour all of my efforts and resources into this new thing, can I still be faithful with what God has already entrusted to me? Whether that's your family, whether that's your spouse, whether that's your kids, whether that's your home or maybe your extended family, maybe you are caring for loved ones or your parents, or you've got some other responsibilities. God really values faithfulness. And so before we start just starting stuff and doing stuff and be like, all right, it doesn't matter, if God's telling me to do it or not, if it's going to interfere with what you've already been entrusted with, that may be pause for you to pump your brakes and just be like, okay, you know what? I need to keep praying about this and seeking God, or maybe the time is not right. I'm not saying that it's a hard no, because God may be shifting seasons. But if it's going to cause you to have to abandon a lot of the responsibilities you're already in charge of, that may be cause to say, all right, you know what? Maybe I should not pursue this thing. So I'll tell you that I had a staff meeting last week. I work in youth development and I'm the director of an after school program. And so I had a staff meeting last week and I have this quote on the wall in the office from Stephen Chandler in his book, Stop Asking for Permission or Stop Waiting for Permission, or something along that lines. And there's this quote that says, without intentional faithfulness, the default state for all of us is chaos. Okay, I have that written on a big Post-it note in our office. And so I was asking my staff, well, what do you think about that? And so they were kind of sharing that. And so what I told them was, if you take on more than you can be faithful with, you will always find yourself asking somebody for forgiveness. So it's cool. You want to go to school, get your education. You also want to work a job. You got a significant other. You got your family. You still want to hang out with your friends or whatever. All of that's fine. As long as you can be faithful with all of those things. Because see, a lot of people are like, yeah, I could get that done. I could slide them in here. I could get this. I could do that. Right. But the question is, can you manage all of that faithfully? Or do you find yourself always asking somebody for forgiveness? Because like I told them, you're calling me saying, hey, I'm sorry, I can't come to work today because I need to go do my homework. I got to go talk to my professor. Are you telling your professor that you didn't do your assignment because you got to be at work? Or you can't never hang out with your family because you tired and you need more sleep because you're doing too much? Or you always got to tell your friends you can't never go nowhere because you're broke? You're taking on more than what you can actually be faithful with. And so without intentional faithfulness, your life will result in chaos. So we had to have that conversation, because my staff will come in with all these bright and grand dreams that they want to pursue. And I'm like, yeah, but you calling in to work once a week. So you need to be mindful of how are you managing your level of faithfulness in all of these things while you're talking about taking on some new projects. So it could be a good idea. It could be a God idea, but you have to ask yourself, where does this fit in with what I've already got going on? So the second thing that I would encourage you to ask yourself before starting a new project or endeavor is, can I give God my best in executing this idea? Can I give God my best in executing this idea? More than faithfulness, God wants our best. And taking on a bunch of things that you're going to half do or piece together, that also is a sign that you may not want to pursue whatever this is that's on your heart or in your mind to do. Colossians 3:23 and 24 says, whatever you do, work at it with all of your heart as working for the Lord, not for human masters, since you know that you will receive an inheritance from the Lord as a reward. It is the Lord Christ you are serving. Now, I can just say for me, I can't stand half doing stuff. Okay, there's stuff that I'm learning and I'm not that great at right now, like all this stuff I'm doing right now, but I don't like half doing stuff. And since I'm made in the image of God, I'm going to boldly declare that God does not like when we half do stuff, right? He's saying whatever you do it with the kind of work ethic as if you're working for the Lord, because if you don't, not only is God not pleased, but you're also robbing yourself, because it says your inheritance is tied to that. So you have to ask yourself, can I give God my best in doing this work and in this new project or this new endeavor, not only to bring him glory, but because there is an inheritance and a reward in my efforts as well. So even if you're like, okay, you know what, I can be faithful to do this, you've got to ask yourself, can I give it 100%? Now, whatever that time that you devote to it, can I be fully focused? Can I be fully present? Can I really fit this into my schedule and give it the best that it deserves? So that way God can have something to make successful. Your efforts plus his blessing can amount to a whole lot in that partnership if you are willing to give it everything that you have. The third question that I would encourage you to ask is, how do I intend to give God glory in this new thing? Now, we already said that should be at the heart of everything that we as believers do, to bring God glory. So then the question is, how? Whatever you're trying to do may not be overtly Christian per se, right? You may not be trying to start no Christian YouTube channel. Maybe you want to do makeup videos. Maybe you want to get into model cars or something. Maybe you want to start, doing hair on the side and you want to kind of get your hair business started up. Or maybe you want to go and you just want to mentor kids, or you want to start a teen program, or you just want to do like some kickbacks with your friends where y'all are uplifting each other and talking about relationships or whatever. Whatever that may be, the question that you should ask yourself is, how will God get glory from this new thing? Number one, that helps you align what you're trying to do. Okay, there are just some things that you cannot figure out a way in which God can get glory, because it's either worldly or it's ungodly, or it may be something that just does not fit with the overall image or idea that God may have in mind for your life. If you just out there trying to do something really ratchet and then just be like, oh, I'm gonna give it 110%. But yeah, if you can't figure out how you're gonna give God glory, that may be a red flag that you need to pump your brakes. So whatever that thing is, and I mean, it could be that you want to give the best service possible. Everybody knows Chick-fil-A is like the gold standard for good service. They've got a top quality project. They got God-honoring chicken, and they have the standard for service in the food industry. You can't beat that. Now, you can be mad about what they believe and what they stand for all day and tomorrow, but you're not going to beat their service. You're just not. That's how they give God glory. There is a standard of excellence that everybody else is trying to copy and mimic in order to do the same. So maybe it's in the way that you offer your product or service in such a way that that excellent kind of customer service brings God glory. Maybe it's the way that you give back to your community. Maybe you're going to start your little side business, so you're going to do your thing, and yet you're going to offer some services maybe for single mothers who can't afford it, right? These are like the barbers and the beauticians who offer free haircuts. A lot of little girls to come in and get their hair done for free before school starts. They're giving back to their community. People who run dress shops, and so they give away free prom dresses, or they let them rent them for free. Whatever that looks like, it's a way in which you are able to help and pour back into the community. What is your plan for that? How can God get glory in saying, you know what? If I entrust you with this thing, I already know that you're going to set aside a certain amount of the budget, right, to do community outreach or to help fund some different things or some in-school initiatives or doing some tutoring services or whatever. How can God be glorified in what you are attempting or wanting to do? Those are also the things that you have to ask yourself. Now, let me caution you this, because I've been here as well. God does not need worldly things in order to fund the kingdom. Okay, the kingdom ain't broke. So you can't say we're going to have a rap concert. You're going to have all these rappers and they up there singing about cars and money and women and they cussing and all of that. And then turn around and say, yeah, but God going to get some glory because I'm going to give 10% to my community. That sends a mixed message. And again, I've been there. Me and some of my friends and some of my cousins years ago had this idea that we were going to throw a party at our community center. It wasn't even going to be anything like overtly ratchet. We was just going to be there. We was going to invite some people. We was going to have them pay at the door. We were going to use the money and we was going to send some kids to church camp. That's what we had intended on doing. We had planned it. We had a date. We had made flyers and all of that. And when word got back around, the Lord ordering our steps and our wise counsel was like, this ain't the way to go about doing it. And so the party never happened. Again, God has ways of stopping things that he does not want to come to fruition. Now, you may not see anything wrong with that, right? Because we're thinking in our minds, God's going to get the glory because we're going to use this money and send some kids to church camp. But God is saying, yeah, but I don't need you to go about doing it this way. And so wherever you sit kind of on that fence, that is something that I would highly encourage you to think about in starting your new endeavor is, how can God get glory? So those are the three questions that I would encourage you to really stop and consider before you take those first steps in doing what you want to do. Number one, can I continue to be faithful with what God has already given me? 2, can I give it 110%? And then 3, how will God get glory from me doing this thing? Those are the 3 questions that I would encourage you to ask. If you can figure out all 3 of those things, and if you can say, yes, I can still be faithful, and if you can say, yes, I still have the space and the capacity to give 110%, and say, yes, I have a plan for how I intend to honor God with it, go. And along the going, keep praying, because like I said, God has a way of rerouting your steps. So I'll just end this video with 1 Corinthians 15 and 58 that says, therefore, my dear brothers and sisters, stand firm. Let nothing move you. Always give yourselves fully to the work of the Lord, because you know that your labor in the Lord is not in vain.